Welcome to this month's Agility Learning Lab. For this month, we're going through production with WiSys, and I'm excited to do this one. This is another one. I know I've talked a little bit about underutilized features the last couple learning labs. I'd say this is another piece that's a little bit underutilized. Of course, it's niche to certain companies that do production or small scale production, but it's a very important piece of WiSys, and there's a lot of functionality in there that I think a lot of people are surprised when they actually get into all the details of what we offer for production out of the box. So should learn a lot today. There's definitely a lot of cool features in here. So before we get started with that, I wanted to leave my camera on for my introduction. If you guys haven't been here before, hello, my name's Chase Linsenbigler. It's good to see you guys. I'm happy to have you all in attendance today. I think this will be an interesting session. I wanted to leave my camera on just to say hello, but I'm going to turn that off so you can focus on the content, not have to worry about looking at me. And what I do here at WiSys is I manage our partner enablement. So I'm a former customer-facing consultant. Of course, being a consultant, I spent a lot of time with the product, tailoring the product, learning the needs of our customers and working with specific customers. And eventually I took those skills over to the partner enablement side to teach and train and assist partners the best I possibly can, just to, build out mostly our SAP Business One partner base. I'm more SAP focused rather than Macola. So of course, with that growing partner program that we have, a big goal for us for 2023 has been to produce a lot of content for end users. So when I talk about content for end users, learning labs specifically factor into there, as well as a lot of other videos on YouTube and written documentation. And really, I try, and a lot of it is geared a little more toward the partner, but I try to make it very accessible for partners, customers, and even prospects alike, so everybody can get something out of these sessions. And today I think is a really good one specifically because we're really going to focus on functionality and the actual use of the product. We've had some more technical sessions in the recent past. Today is going to be a little less technical and more focused on the actual applications we offer out of the box. So these learning labs are on the second Tuesday of each month, 2:30 to 3:30 EST. We've been doing them all year, so this is our 11th. If you haven't been here before, we do have the prior 10 learning labs on our YouTube page. We've covered a lot of great stuff this year, so you have that opportunity to go to our WiSys YouTube channel and check out those past sessions. And if you want to be here in the future, we only send out an invite about a week in advance. So I always recommend if you want to make sure you have this time available. I know everybody's busy and calendars fill up. So if you want to block off time for it, it will always be the second Tuesday every month, 2:30 to 3:30 EST going forward, and we'll continue this on through 2024. For my partners that are in attendance today, I'm a dedicated resource to you guys for introduction training, deeper training on the design tools and tailoring our applications. And then I'm also here for standing team meetings, just for whether that's for your WiSys issue list, continued questions on specific customers like customer processes, questions for a specific tailoring. I like to try and get standing meetings on the calendar for every partner that I can, just to continue enabling you guys and be a resource for you. So I know we have a lot of partners in attendance today, and a lot of you I work with on a pretty regular basis, so it's good to see you guys. But anybody that I don't talk with regularly, if you think there's some more that you can get out of me and you want to spend some time with me and learn a little bit more about the product, reach out. Let's get something set up, and I can help your team become as strong with WiSys as possible, which that's my goal for every partner. I want you guys to all feel very confident in the product. So reach out and we can get something on the calendar. Now, without further ado, why are we here today? So today, again, is going to be more on the front end of the product. We're not going to get super technical like we have in some past sessions. We're going to go through the out-of-the-box offering for production. So in today's session, I will cover basically everything that we offer out of the box, or everything that is pretty notable. There's going to be some grids and stuff that I skip over because showing one or two grids is enough to get an understanding. But we'll go through all of the out-of-the-box handheld applications for production. So we'll talk about the main process flows. We'll start with a standard production process flow. we have a couple different ways to do it standard in WiSys, but really there's one main way that in most cases would be our recommendation. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll do the same process flow, but for a batch or serial tracked finished good. So just to show a little bit of the difference there, we will issue some batch and serial track goods as well as standard items, but the first item that we actually complete will be a standard item, and then the next item we complete will be serial tracked. So you get a feel for the difference there whenever your finished goods are serial or batch tracked. Then we'll talk about production to a pallet. Very similar process. We're using SAP's production module, so we're following those same guidelines, except we're creating a pallet in WiSys or adding those finished goods to a pallet in WiSys, which of course is one of the key features of the WiSys system. And if you haven't learned about our packaging layer yet, I do have some videos out there about that, but it allows you to easily group together items. And it's another way to organize your inventory and quickly have accessible data, information, and easy inventory movement by palletizing those items. And then lastly, we'll talk about production on the fly, which is a really cool part. We do have a out-of-the-box application that allows you to do production on the fly, basically in a one-step process. And we'll talk about that at the end. It's really cool, and I think that that's probably the most underutilized part of all of this. People usually don't understand where that fits in the process flow. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like, why you would use it, and how you would use it. But first, we'll cover a little bit about production on the desktop. That's going to be pretty high level. Like I said before, this will be more focused on process flow and the out-of-the-box applications. But we'll talk about a couple of grids. We'll talk about our production calendar, and we'll refer back to that production calendar and some grids and things like that throughout the session today. All right. So I'm going to get started by jumping into Agility Explorer here. So in Agility Explorer, we have our production module. It's set up the same way as SAP, so you would go to your production module, and in your Agility folder, you would have any of the WiSys grids available to you, or if you're in Agility Explorer, you would just go to that production module and they would all be listed there. Now, I do have some custom tailored applications that I've made myself, and there's some other things in here that I've been testing, but I wanted to talk about two main grids first, just to talk about production visibility, because I feel like that's something SAP lacks in some ways. So the first key part of this is with our grids, we have easily accessible data straight from your SAP database, right at the tip of your fingers. If you're not experienced with the grids, it's an Excel style format. Basically, we query the database, display that information on the screen, and we do have links back to SAP. So I can click an item, for example, here, and I can open that bill of materials in SAP. Now jumping back to my grid, sorry, my audit's turned on. I forgot to turn that off. When I jump back to my grid here though, this is all of my open production orders. Of course, this is a demo database, so I have a lot of expired older things, but you can get a easy to access list of your production orders. You can easily jump into SAP by clicking a hyperlink to the order or to the BOM for the item. You get all the details for the item as far as due date, when the actual production order was released, what's the completed quantity, were any rejected, what was the planned quantity, all of the details on your production orders. Quickly accessible here. This is a good grid to be leveraged by, say, a production manager or someone on the shop floor who's, involved in the production process and needs to plan out their day in the morning. This is a kind of a home base, so to speak, inside of WiSys for production. So I wanted to start there. In addition to that, we do have a production resource grid that's very valuable as well. So you can sort that by your orders. These are two of the orders we're going to cover today, 594 and 593. And really, you can just see all the resources that are needed for each order throughout the day, which is another piece that's important in planning when you're talking about things like packaging or, how much time are we going to have to spend assembling things throughout the day. You can easily jump in here, view the production resources in addition to that production orders grid, and get a feel for the entire day, right? So that's the biggest piece of Agility on the desktop that's worth leveraging, is looking into, your orders, your resources, planning out your day, being on top of what's due, when it's due, that type of information where, you would either have to query SQL or HANA to get that information at your fingertips typically, or create a dashboard inside of B1 with an add-on, or actually go to the orders in B1 and, skim through your orders. So WiSys puts it at the tip of your fingers, gives you a good start to the day there with information on your production process. But the most important piece of that, in my opinion, is our production calendar. So here you see an actual calendar format. Now, of course, if I was running a real production process here, I would have orders probably for the foreseeable future all scheduled here throughout the calendar. Now, I just have some orders that are due today for the learning lab, but you can see here, I can look at a specific day, and I can go down through and look at all the orders that are available on that day. Then I can click on them to also get that resource information once again. So when it comes to daily planning, I can easily see, okay, I got 3 orders due on this day. 2 of them require assembly. This one doesn't even have any assembly. So, we can assume maybe that's just something quick, right? Like snapping 2 pieces together or something like that. I do need packaging for my first order. I can get a little glimpse into what the day looks like. And we're going to refer back and forth this production calendar because this is a really key piece. So at the end of the day, a lot of the time, what we see is a production manager will have this, maybe on their desktop and refer back to it throughout the day to track and see how orders are moving. Or this is something you might actually put on a big screen in the production facility where, everybody who's in there working on production can look up, see the calendar, get an understanding of what's there for the day. They can interact with it if they want to scroll down and see, maybe they want to get a quick one in before lunch. They find the easiest order in there and knock it out real quick. Whatever they're doing, this is a good, again, like a home base to get easy access to the production information that's inside of SAP, bring it to WiSys, get it at the tip of your fingers. So we'll come back and forth this throughout the day, but now we'll get on to the actual processes. So before we do so, let's jump back to the PowerPoint here. So for our standard production process, typically we recommend setting a production bin. That's how I'm going to do the standard and the batch or serial tracked item process today. When we talk about a production bin, we set that in WiSys in your Agility settings. I'll show you that. And what it does is it basically forces that bin in whenever you do your production receipt. We assume those items automatically go into your production bin. And then you would actually do a third step in the process called production put away to take those items from your production bin and put them into inventory. So the other option to this is if you don't have a production bin set, as you do production receipt, let's say I do a receipt for 10 of a printer, I would actually have to take all 10 of those printers, find the bin they're going to, scan that bin in on the gun and say I'm putting all 10 into this bin, and do the receipt directly into where you're putting them away, which typically is not the process. That can be really good for very small scale production. If I have an order for, hey, I'm just assembling one quick item today. I'm just putting together a printer and then I'm going to carry that printer and stick it right into inventory. Then maybe you don't want a bin in that case. Very small scale cases, that's good. But the reason I say this is generally what we recommend. If you're doing more than 1 or 2 small items, you're probably going to want a production bin so you can worry about, actually producing the items first, doing the production receipts, and then somebody can come and grab those items and put them into inventory. So standard 3-step process. We do the issue based off of the order in SAP. We only issue the manual components. The backflush components, of course, are automatically issued upon receipt. Then we do the production receipt on the handheld. And finally, if you have that production bin set like we will today, those items from the production receipt, the finished goods, will go directly into the production bin, and then somebody will use the production put away to come get those items and put them into the, the physical inventory warehouse, or maybe even take them over to the dock if they're already ready to be shipped out. Whatever the situation is, they'll take them from the production bin at that point. All right, so I'm going to go over to SAP here. And we're going to be working with this order first. This is order 593. And again, we have 5 components to this order. 3 of them are manual issue. The other two are backflushed resources. Even if this was an actual item that was backflushed, we don't have to worry about the backflush stuff. That will all happen automatically upon receipt, even if you do the receipt in WiSys. Everything's good there. So we need to worry about issuing these 3 manual items first. So I'm going to pull up my handheld here, and I'm going to switch to my production menu. And remember, everything in production is in the production menu. I know sometimes with things like WiSys fulfillment, you jump around sometimes between pallets and essentials and things like that. But everything production related is in the production menu. So if you have a worker or an employee who is only doing production related functionality, they can just live in this menu. They won't have to jump around. So everything I need today is right here. So I'm going to go to my production issue form, and I'm going to start with the first item on this order. Again, we have 3 items on this order here. And of those 3 items, one is a standard item, one is batch tracked, one's serialized. So you'll get a feel for the difference on how we treat those items from a production issue standpoint here. All right, so I'm going to do my order 593. And typically today, I'm going to operate off of the assumption that, I had a physical paper production order or BOM printout that I'm actually going off of, so I know the resources. I have barcodes printed out. I'm going to be doing scanning. But in the case that that's not what happened, they don't have a physical order in front of them, or they're not scanning barcodes, you can go to this lookup right here, and you can easily see all of the items that are manual issue that you'll have to go in here and issue yourself. So here's our list of manual items. We can go ahead and just start with the first one. Like I said, this is a standard item. It's not batch or serial tracked. So we select that item. Again, typically I'm going to be scanning these going forward. We can look at a bin. Now, the real warehouse process, I don't have barcodes for the bins. Typically what's going to happen here is I'm actually going to scan the bin when I take the item, right? So I go to where the item physically is, I grab it, I scan in my 0517 bin, then I'll enter my quantity. 2 are required. I'm just going to grab them both from the same bin. Hit enter. And it's going to trigger a production issue label to print. So I can print that to the screen. You can see what that looks like. I could stick that on those 2 items so I know they're issued for production whenever I get them over to my production bin. And now if I jump back in SAP in real time, we see those 2 items are issued. And we can even go over to our issue for production in SAP here. And we can see this issue for production 696. We have that same item, a quantity of 2 issued in the system, right? Pretty simple, but we're going to do this throughout today too. We're going to go back and forth between WiSys and SAP just to get that to stick, right? That everything's happening in real time. I perform the transaction in WiSys, it happens in SAP, so on and so forth. It's all automatic, real time. Those things are happening as I'm performing them on the handheld. So now I'm going to jump back in here and I'm just going to go through my next 2 items. So I'm going to be scanning now. So I walk over, I grab this, I'm not selected on my handheld. Grab this B10000. Again, I don't have bin labels, so I'm going to go and find a bin that has it. Take it out of here. And we're going to find a batch. So this is a batch tracked item. Now, again, typically the label, since this is a batch tracked item, probably has a barcode on it for the batch, and I would just scan that. If it doesn't, then you can manually enter it in or use a lookup to find the batch like I just did there. Enter in a quantity of 5. And again, I can print a screen. I'll probably start skipping these so we're not spending a ton of time printing labels to screen, but you get the point. As I issue them, I get a label for each good. Then we'll do our last good here. This is going to be a serialized item. Now you see this triggers another form to pull from inside of the original form. And what happens here is I get a grocery store style scanning method for serial numbers. So for this order, for this BOM, what we're looking at really is just a quantity of 1 for this serialized item, right? But let's say it asks for 10 of that item. I can now go through once I selected the bin and scan, scan every serial. And if it asks for 10, I just scan. It keeps adding them to the list. And then I save, and it makes one issue with all 10 items, right? Now, in this case, you're not really going to get to see that because I only have one item for the BOM. But as you see, I select it, it automatically adds it to the list down here. Then I could just scan again to scan another serial, right? So ease of use is the reason for this pop-up inside the original form. The original form, you would basically have to do it one by one and only create one goods issue at a time for each serial item. So we call this pop-up inside of there. So again, grocery store style, just scan every serial you want to do, hit save here at the end, and it would create an issue with all the serial numbers added to that list there. So now all my items are issued. I'm ready to go in and do my production receipt, but we can check in SAP just to make sure everything looks right. Again, we're all issued here. We can go to our issue for production. There's our batch tracked item and our serialized item. So we're ready to go. But let's say the case presents itself here that, one of my warehouse workers comes up to me and says, hey, that batch that you grabbed for that B10,000 item, we're doing quality assurance on that batch. We're not sure, we're not confident that that's okay to go out. Can you put that back and grab a different item? Well, I already did a production issue. So what would I do in that case? I would use the production return form. So again, we're saying that that batch that I grabbed for B10,000 wasn't good. We don't want to send that out yet. We don't want to use that in the product that we're completing here. So I'm going to put it back. I'm going to start by just typing in my order. And I'm going to scan that item, B10,000. And I'm going to select a bin to put it into. So I'm going to put it back into regular inventory. Let's say that this 0517 is our quality assurance bin. They're telling me they want to check those items out, make sure they're good. I'll stick it there. Then of course here, I only pulled one batch for the production order. So I could just scan that batch. There's only one, but in some cases you may have multiple. I grabbed the batch they didn't want me to use in the order. And I put in the quantity. I'm going to do the full quantity of 5 here and save. And what's going to happen now is I did my production return. A production return label will print out that I can stick on those items to say, okay, there it is. I printed it to screen to say that I returned those items to inventory. So now that's ready. They can go back to inventory. But what happens in SAP in this case, so you'll see that 5 when I refresh, it drops off and goes to 0. My SAP is being a little slow here. Now I no longer have that issued. You see it's not grayed out anymore. It's going to need reissued. Now there's no negative issue for production or anything like that that gets created. This is a common misconception whenever it comes to what's the actual flow look like in SAP when you return something from your production issue. So you can see here, I jumped all the way back to issue for production number 1. Doesn't create a new issue in there. What it does do is it actually creates a receipt from production to unissue those items and bring them back into inventory. So we can see here we have a new receipt from production that I just made today for that order 593. There's our batch tracked item, and we can see that it went into my quality assurance bin, that 0517. And now that item is back, and I can go ahead and issue another item to move forward, of course, here with my order. So we'll just quickly reissue that item. Just wanted to make sure to cover how to do a production return in here too, because that can be a cause for some questions and confusion at times. Now we'll take it from another bin and we will find a batch that my team is confident is good. It's ready to be used in my production. So we'll grab this new batch here. That actually looks really similar to the original batch. Maybe it's even the same, but it's test data, so it doesn't matter. And I'll skip the printing here. We've printed enough. But of course, there's my production issue label. And now we are reissued. It's grayed out again. It's ready to go. And we can see once again, Now we have a new issue for production number 699 in here. And all my items are ready. So now I can move forward with doing a production receipt. So let's go ahead and do that. So we jump into production receipt here on the handheld. And we're going to start with entering in our order. So our order is 593. And you can see down here too, our bin automatically fills in. Let's actually take a look at that first. So our bin fills in because that's our production bin. I set that up in my WiSys settings. So when you go to you click on that little hamburger up in the top left corner, you go to your device settings. Here you see my prod bin, that's my production bin. It's set as 05P. You know, I could change this in here and use a different production bin if I needed to, but 05P is my production bin. So it's set here in my WiSys settings. That tells the system that I'm not going to automatically put this away as I produce items, as I do the production receipt. Every item goes into that production bin. And then it also tells the system that if I use production put away is going to pull directly from that production bin. Similar to a regular put away, if you're using WiSys on the inbound side, you might do a GRPO to your receiving bin, and then a regular put away form looks at the receiving bin and pulls items out of that. This production put away form looks at our production bin and pulls items out of there. So we enter in that 593. We're sending our new item straight to 05P as we do our production receipt. The quantity remaining is only 1, so that's what I'm going to do. Hit OK. Again, as usual, I get my production receipt label here. Once this prints, there's my finished good label. I can slap that on the finished good, stick it in my production bin. And now, you know, if I'm working on the production side of things, I can just keep going about my day and, you know, doing production receipts for various items, sticking them into that bin. And typically the process would be someone else, an actual warehouse worker is going to come over and pull those items out of the production bin and take them to the actual inventory. You know, that's not my job. I'm over here producing a lot of items in a day. So I'm just sticking them right into that bin when they're done. And then it's out of sight, out of mind for me. Someone else can come and move them into inventory. Now, when we jump over here, we'll notice nothing has changed yet because we still have to put the items away. So we don't want to change this to closed. It stays as released. But, well, actually, something did change. You see our issued backflushed items. I did want to call that out. And we can actually go for issue for production here. And we can see we do have a new issue for those 2 backflushed items. And now we have our receipt from production as well. So there's our finished good, that A0003, quantity of 1, completed that today, it's done. So now our receipt from production is done. And finally, we can go ahead and put these items away. So we can go to our production put away form here. And you see, again, it defaults in our production bin, 05P. So based on our setting, we know, okay, this is the bin we need to take it from. That's the bin it went into in the first place. And those are the only items we're going to query here inside of this form. So this is everything that I have in that bin, which is a lot of stuff because this is test data. But if I scan our finished good, that A0003, looks like we actually do have 2 in that bin. I'm going to pick a new bin to put it into. Let's do 05A1. And I'll just do a quantity of 1. I'll just do the one I produced. I'm not worried about any other items, right? I'm coming over to grab 1 printer and put it into this new bin. So I come over, I do that. Production put away is done. I can jump back in here. I can actually go to my inventory transactions. And now we'll have a new transfer in there showing that item go from the original production bin to a new bin. So we see we have a 1-to-1. And we have our 05P loses the item, and then the item is going into 05A1. So again, really the production put away form is just a transfer, but the reason it becomes put away is because we're utilizing that default bin so we can quickly produce goods, stick them in the production bin, and then we can have somebody else come over, pull those items out of the production bin, and, you know, of course, transfer them into actual inventory. So the transaction itself is just an inventory transfer, but it's defaulted based off of the production bin, which is what makes it, our put away function there. And now at this point, I would say the order is good. I know it's been put away. Maybe the manager just reviews that at the end of the day. He's going to go ahead and close that out. And if I jump back over to Agility Explorer here and refresh, we'll see 593 has dropped off the list. And now again, in real time, just by refreshing, we see that our calendar is updated to the final 2 orders that we have to do in this day. Now, another thing to note here too, I have this set to manual refresh. Any of these grids can be switched though. When I talked about the fact that some people use calendars and grids like this on a big screen in like a production area or in the warehouse, you could set this to refresh every 15 minutes or every 30 seconds or whatever you want to do. And it would just refresh throughout the day. So as those get completed again, the real-time aspect of WiSys, right? It's just getting refreshed, they're dropping off the grid, and you have real visibility into what's left to do, what do I got to get done today. So now we'll move forward and we'll get into doing the same process real quick for a serialized item. We'll do it a lot faster this time since you've seen it already. But production for a serial or batch tracked item, again, one of the nice things about the way the out-of-the-box system works here is same process, right? I go to the same forms. Some things function a little bit differently inside of those forms, but it's the same 3 simple steps. I do the issue on the handheld for the manual issue items. I do the production receipt. And if I have that production bin set like we will today, then I will do production put away from that bin. So we'll go over to our next order here. We're going to do 594. We have 1 item that needs manual issued, just a quantity of 1, so real easy. The other 2, the item and the other resource are going to be backflushed, so that will all happen automatically upon receipt. We can jump in here to production issue and go ahead with 594. And I'm going to scan the item that needs issued. It's A0001. And then, same process as usual here. I'll find the bin I'm taking it out of. Let's just take it from 05A1, and we only need a remaining quantity of 1. And again, I could have looked at the lookup if I needed to see the list. I have these barcodes printed out, so let's operate off of the assumption that, at the start of the day, the production manager gives me, maybe a stack of a couple of BOMs that I'm going to produce throughout the day, right? So I know those items. But if you don't, you can use the lookup. You can even have a tailored form that tells you exactly every item you're going to need to issue for the day. There's tons of different ways to do that inside of WiSys. All right, so I skipped printing the form. The issue is done. Again, we can jump in here and refresh. Now we have that item issued. I know we're being repetitive here, but it's just important to grasp that real-time nature of WiSys. As soon as I click that save button, I can go in here and refresh or go to the next document, and that information is entered into SAP. All right, so now that that's issued, we can go ahead and do our receipt from production now. So 1 simple item to issue. This case, I don't have any issues with the item that I issued. They're not telling me to bring it back, so I don't need to do a return. I'm just going to go ahead and do my production receipt. Order 594 again. And this time it's a serialized item. So this is why I wanted to show this, even though it's not major and it's generally the same process. This is really important to note. We have a serial and batch manager as a part of WiSys, right? You can set that up in your Agility settings, and it can automatically create serial and batches based on roles that you set inside of Agility. And it can be a lot of roles. It can be stacking, maybe you have 10 steps to how it creates that serial number, right? That's something we offer, happens automatically. Now, today, I'm not showing that because that is a whole learning lab in its own, and that's on the roadmap. We'll probably do that at some point here. But I wanted to note that because if I had that set up right now, I wouldn't be required to make a serial, right? The system's automatically going to make a serial based off the rules I've defined. Now, in this case, I don't have that set up, so I have to make the serial myself. If you're not using serial and batch manager, the employee that does the production receipt here, they will have to make the serial or batch number for the completed items. So I'm just going to give it a serial number, 68794, hit OK. And if you have questions on serial and batch manager and how that works too, you don't have to wait for the next learning lab. Go ahead and reach out to me at the end of this session, and we can talk about that if that's something that you're looking into. It's definitely a good way to streamline the process and make things faster here. All right, and once again, we have our finished good label. And of course, I'm using the out of the box labels here. They're very basic. If you're creating finished goods out of a cereal, you probably want to actually tailor this label to have a barcode on there for the cereal, or at least the serial number should be listed on there, right? All right. So again, I have my production bin set. Those items went into the production bin. If I refresh here, my backflush stuff will turn to issued. There we go. Still released because we have to put the item away, so we're not focused on closing that out yet. And if we go to our issue, there we go. There's our backflushed items issued, ready to go. And now, again, I can go ahead and put those items away using production put away. I'll just go ahead and scan that finished good, which was S10,000. And of course, it's worth mentioning here that I'm using a third-party emulator. It's not not our emulator. And sometimes those go a good bit slower than the handheld. So you shouldn't be slowed down like this on your handheld device. I have a little bit of a lag from the emulator here. All right, S10,000. Sorry, everybody. A little bit of a slowdown. So again, because this is a serialized item that I just produced, we're calling a form inside of the form to easily transfer those serials, right? To easily select multiple serials. So in this case, I'm moving one, I'm just moving the item that I just created. But again, it's the same grocery style form inside of the original form, right? If I had a bunch of different serial numbers I needed to transfer, I have that ability now right in here to just select the bin I'm putting them into and then scan every serial I want to move. And then when I post, it will post the transfer, including every serial number I've selected. So, just another important thing to note about the difference in functionality between batch and serial tracked items and things like that. The process is a little bit different here. We use a pop-up form because it streamlines it and makes it, a lot faster when it comes to serial items because it's a one-off situation for each serial number. Yeah, and I've encountered a real slowdown here, but bear with me. We're almost done with the handheld stuff anyway, and if it gets too slow, I can switch to Agility Mobile. Because Agility Mobile, we have an emulator that we provide that's going to be a lot quicker than a third-party one. All right, I'm going to grab that new serial I made, 68794. And again, it adds it to the list below here. So that's where that grocery style scanning comes in. I could just scan a bunch of serials, add them to the list, and post them all at once to one inventory transaction. But in this case, I'm just going to do the one serial number here. And post. All right, so now that is done. It has posted. It brings me back so I could do the same item again if I want to. I am not going to. Now I can go in here and see my new inventory transfer for that S10,000 item. I forget which bin I selected it to go into, but obviously I chose the bin and it goes to that bin from my 05P production bin. There we go, from 05P to this new bin I selected, 05A1 S1 L3. And again, now it's put away. I know that that order is good. I'm done dealing with it. Maybe the production manager gives a quick review, make sure everything looks good, closes it out. And then I can jump back into Agility Explorer there and check my production calendar, and I will see that that item will drop off of the calendar there. All right, so it's closed up. Can go back to my calendar here and refresh. Agility Explorer is going fast. That's nice. And now I just have order number 595 left. So we started with 3 orders here for the day, you know, and you see as we're moving through the process, orders are dropping off as we complete them. And now we just have to do 595. So order number 595 is going to be our unique one here, and we're going to produce to a pallet. So when it comes to pallet production, the process becomes 2 steps. It still is kind of like a 3rd step because of the way the second form functions, but we'll talk about that. So the 2-step process is you do the production issue like before. You know, you just look for the manual items that need issued, then you go ahead and you issue those. Then you use our pallet production form, which still is in the production menu. It's not in the pallet menu. It's just right there in production. And what pallet production does is it gives you the ability to do that production receipt to a pallet in WiSys. So you can either do that to an existing pallet. You could say, okay, I made a bunch of red printers earlier. They're sitting on this pallet. Now I had an order for 3 blue printers. There's room on that pallet. They can all go together. I'll just produce those 3 blue printers to that pallet that already exists, wrap it all up and go put it in inventory, right? You have that ability, or you can create a new pallet in WiSys. You just say that you want to do a new pallet, and then you add the finished goods that you're creating right now straight to that new pallet. The reason there's no 3rd step is this does not look at your production bin because we have to create that pallet in a bin. So we're actually going to tell it what bin we want to create that pallet for, and basically it's doing your put away function for you automatically, right? It's taking those items and it's putting them on a pallet in a bin, so it's already added to your inventory, ready to go. So this is a process where, you know, you're not building a pallet in your production bin, because typically your production bin is an actual basket or table or something like that, where as you produce these, you're just sticking them there. You're not putting a pallet there. Usually a production bin's not a physical, you know, bin or area. It's a section where you're actually sticking items, right? So in this case, we produce that pallet and create it in a bin, and that's where it's going to sit in inventory. So if we jump back to SAP here, we can take a look at our final order we're going to work with. $595. And as you can see here, I have 2 manual issue items, 1 back flush item. So this will be a nice quick one. All right, so that explains the slowdown. Closed out of my app. That's okay. Hopefully we'll be a little bit faster here. I'm probably using a lot of my bandwidth because I have a lot of different things going right now, but that's the price of demoing. If it's faster, maybe I'll just do Agility Mobile here. See what opens first. So of course, you know, Agility 360 is our Android product. WiSys doesn't deliver a, we don't create an Android emulator for you. We do, however, provide an Agility mobile emulator for our legacy product, and that's what I'm just going to use now because it's going to be quicker. Using the third-party emulators to demo is not always the most efficient thing as far as bandwidth and speed. All right, so I'm gonna go to production here. I go to production issue. You can see the look and feel is a little bit different. This is our legacy product. It's not native Android, doesn't use IIS. And actually, I don't need to look that up. So let's pull this back up. My order is $595. And I can go ahead and scan in the items I'm going to issue. So first I'm going to do that D0250CX. Find a bin that I want to take it out of. We got a ton in this bin, so we'll do that. It's a batch tracked item. It's only got one batch in that bin though. I just need one. There we go. Again, I could print this label to the screen. Here's my production issue label. Slap that on the good or the component. And then now I can do my second item, FD041. And this is a serial tracked item. So I'll go find a bin and take a serial. Same thing, even though it looks different here because I'm not using Agility 360 and I've switched to the legacy Agility mobile. I could go through and scan as many serials if I want. If that quantity was 30, I'm just going down the list, right? Grocery store style, scanning every serial I want to add. Then I hit save and it brings all those serials over on one production issue. All right, now the issuing is done. Jump back here. Both of those items are issued. I have my two new issues. I know we've gone through this so many times, but by the end, you'll be an expert and know exactly how production issue works because it's the same in every WiSys process. So there we go. And now we're ready to do our receipt from production. But again, I'm not using receipt from production this time. I'm using pallet production. So when I go into pallet production here, I could query the database for a list of my pallets if I was going to add this to an existing pallet. Here's all of my pallets that exist. I could just scan in that pallet number. Typically, that's probably what you would be doing, right? You'd have a pallet label on there, you scan that number and you add these items to it. But in this case, I'm going to put this finished good on a pallet of its own. It's going to be a brand new pallet in WiSys that doesn't exist yet. So I'm going to hit enter. And then it's going to be for this order, $595. And I will pick a bin that I'm going to build that pallet in. So we'll use 0517 again. And this is a batch tracked item. So I could look at existing batches if I wanted. I'm just going to create my own. So, I could add it to an existing batch if I maybe made a pallet. I made a pallet of 30 and they all had the same batch. And technically this is the same batch, but it's going to need to be on a new pallet. I could use my query tool there, find that batch from before, make sure it has the same batch number, but I'll give it a new one here. And then quantity of one, real simple. And I'm not going to worry about printing this pallet label out. So now I have my pallet created. I produce those items. So I'll have a production receipt. I'll have a new pallet. And we can go ahead and check that data. So first, our issued component, still open. We want to check over that, make sure we're good to close it. Jump back here. And we can go to our pallet view. So we'll go to our inventory pallet view in Agility Explorer. And if I sort from most recent, here you go. There's that 59595 serial number in that bin 0517 that we created. There's our new item, right, created on this date. We have our new pallet created successfully. So you saw the receipt, you saw the backflush items get issued. Now you see the pallet here in the system. Everything is good there. So I feel good about that now. I produce those items. They're on a pallet in my inventory. And when I'm ready to load that pallet on a shipment or maybe even pick items off that pallet, I will do so and fulfill my sales orders. But for now, that's palletized inventory. It's in my inventory. I'm good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and close this production order out. And lastly, we'll jump in here, refresh, and there goes all my orders for the day. They're gone, they're closed out. Jump me back to July for some reason there. But all my orders for November 14th are closed, they're gone. There we go, right? So I wanted to show that throughout the session today, how we can just have them drop off that calendar. You can track what you have to do. And those were all the orders that I had planned, but now we have one last process to look at, and probably the most interesting, and that's going to be our production on the fly. So when I talk about production on the fly, it doesn't care about production bin. It's taking all three of those standard steps and it's putting them into one because, maybe Johnny over in shipping says, hey, I have an order that needs to go out in the next 10 minutes and I am one item short of A0003. I need one of those real quick. Can you go and just make one for me real fast, right? So we combine all these steps into one process. So it's a real fast, sleek process. It actually creates an order in the system, issues the items, creates the receipt. You put those items away immediately because we're assuming if you're doing it on the fly, you're doing it for a reason. We don't want to stick it in a production bin. You're putting it somewhere, either to fulfill a sales order or maybe the minimum threshold of a bin dropped a little too low. So somebody says, hey, can you go make two of those real quick so we're at a better minimum and I'll put in a bigger order later, maybe for Friday before the weekend, right? So I'm doing this on the fly. It's not going in a production bin. I put it away immediately. And when all those steps are done, it closes the order. And it's all done in one simple form called production backfill, 3 steps in one. And I'll show you that real quick now. I know this is a little bit of a longer session, but this is our last piece to it. So first, actually, I'll bring this up just for proof. We have no order after that one, or let's jump to our last order. Our last order is 603. So yeah, we go from 603 to 1. So now we're going to create production order 604. So if I go in production backfill right here, real simple, I scan my parent item. That's the item I want to make. I'm making it in warehouse 05. And when I'm done, this needs to go out the door. So I'm going to stick it in my dock bin, 05 dock, so it can get shipped out of the system. And I'm going to just do one real quick. They need one more for the sales order. I do have a BOM view that I can view too and see the components I need. So quickly here on the fly, I can check and say, okay, I'm making this real fast. What are the components? What do I need to do so? I check this BOM view real quick. All right, that's all I need. I grab that stuff, I put it together, save it in production backfill. And again, it should probably trigger a label to print here. So we can print that label, slap that on our finished good if it's necessary. And now we see we have a new 604 for that item A0003 that we just created. All those items are finished, issued. We have our receipt. Or where are we at here? There it is, 604. There's our receipt for item number A0003. Finished in the system. And we can check the bin location too and see that it's in that dock bin. So again, on the fly there, we didn't even have an order before, right? We said we need an item, we got to produce this right away. We use that form, we can check the BOM view there and see all the items we need to produce it. We quickly produce it, create the receipt, put it away, doing all that in one simple step on the handheld. I mean, you see that was by far the quickest process of the day. But that's an easy way to do that on the fly without an existing order in SAP. So that's the last process I wanted to show you. Just to run back through what we did today. We talked about our standard production process, which fits pretty true to SAP and SAP's production module. You have your issue from production, you have your receipt from production, and as long as you're using our production bin, you would have a production put away as well. Then we talked about producing to a pallet. Similar, you do the production issue still, but instead of a production receipt form, you do our pallet production form that takes those, that finished good, puts that finished good directly onto a pallet in WiSys and puts it away into inventory. And then you have, a new inventory pallet with your finished goods there. And then lastly, we did production on the fly using our production backfill form. And again, real simple. You don't need an order to start with. It creates the order and it closes it out at the end and does everything in between, so you can quickly produce an item if you need to, because that's the real world application, right? All the time in operations, especially ones that do small scale production, you might run into a situation where it's, hey, I need this and I need it quick. Well, you can use production backfill to quickly produce those goods, and there you go, you have them in the system. And lastly, we talked throughout the session about production on the desktop, and really there's kind of two key features to that, right? You have that ability to easily query data, see data on your orders and your resources and things like that, as well as actually look at a calendar and plan your day around that. So it's just a good home-based starting point, and you can tailor freely to the desktop to get more functionality in there and maybe even do actual production like production receipt or production issue on the desktop. But what we offer out of the box, it's informative, it helps you plan, and you can use that as a home base while using the actual handheld to perform the transactions. So that's all I had for you guys today. For any additional enablement, contact me directly. I'm sure there's probably some questions that come up out of this. Like I said, too, serial and batch builder. If you need additional information on that, since we didn't show it today, I will cover that in the near future, but I'd love to answer questions about that as well.